I think we're live, yes. Hi everyone to my no slide session here about data quality and building data quality with stakeholders. Really looking forward to this. I'll jump into my screen share. All right, here we go. And I prepared a combination of 3 parts. One is just an introduction of a couple of ideas that I wanted to share. Then we'll go into a live poll. This is an experiment with a tool called Mentimeter, and then we'll dive into some use cases and demo examples. So to set the stage, I kind of stole this idea of the analogy of data quality as a campfire from Chad Sanderson, which I really like because it resembles this idea of you want people to gather around a campfire and spend time with data quality. And this analogy has a couple of nice things in it, because as a beginner, you're looking for good firewood. You can't really find anything. As an intermediate, you maybe overdo it. So you have a huge bonfire, just like the data quality is hard to control. And then throughout the process of maturity, you'll find the right material on the right level. And how do you manage to spend or to get people around the campfire? You need something they really like. You need sweets. And in my session description, I talked about the combination of sweets and vegetables when it comes to making people gather around data quality. And this is what the topic is about. Just a very quick detour of what I actually do. I'm Chris. I work in an internal central data team for an online retailer called Bergzeit. We sell to Europe. I think we're one of the leading retailers, online retailers in the space of mountain gear and outdoor. And we're an internal data team of about 6 people, and we work closely with the analysts and focus on data quality. And what I want to share, of course, is some experiences of how we get stakeholders engaged with data quality. And if we look at this very uniform marshmallow that presumably everybody likes, it's not so clear what the marshmallow is in terms of a data event that is important for a stakeholder, right? And what I like to think of it is, if you have, let's say, an SEO lead, you want to look at those leading indicators that they have to worry about, but they don't change that much. And then you can have them covered by saying, look, we'll write a test for these leading indicators. It's a business alert, basically. And then we can lure them in and tie them in to a discussion about things that change about data. And then, if we have their attention, we can throw in some healthy snacks, which is sort of the more boring stuff of uniqueness, state completeness, not null, etc. And that's this combination I want to talk about today and share some live examples. Now, I want to get to know you as an audience. So for those couple of people who are in the live stream, and let's just see if this works. So I have shared a link in the chat, a Mentimeter link, and I would like to go through a couple of questions to get to know what your role is, where your background is, and what your level of data maturity is. So we'll just jump right in. I shared the link. I also shared the access code in the chat. I think it's 4553 and 5553, and I will just jump right in and see if this works. If it doesn't, I'll just go into the demo part. Let's see. So we are on the first question of what is your role in data, and let's see if the people are actually jumping in. It's the code 4553 and 5553, right? Let's see if the first reactions are coming in. Fantastic. Right. So apparently I didn't capture the roles properly that of the attendees, which is interesting. Right. Let's continue to the next question, which is how many people work in data. And just to give context, I would include the analysts as well in these central teams. Okay, so we have a bit of everything here, which is nice. Let's see. Let's move on to the next question, which is, how often do you check data quality? Is it only when you publish new features, or daily, weekly? Right, so rather regularly. That's good. Let's see. How many data models do you have in your overall project? Data model is a SQL file, Python asset. Let's see how large these projects are. So plus 500. So to give some context, in our case, we are beyond the 500 as well. So we have a mix here. Okay, so we have a bit of everything, which is nice. Now, which data quality tools do you use in your day-to-day work? You can use multiple tools. I can see I didn't capture all the tools. It's hard to list all of them, of course. So DBT, we have quite a few. We have Dataform as well. Right. So this is good because I'm going to show a couple examples with DBT and also Great Expectations. So it will be relevant for at least some of the people in the audience. That's great. Okay. Now, last question. Going through the individual, let's say, pillars of data quality maturity, let's see how much you would agree with these statements. So I think there should be a bar you can shift from left to right on where you are in terms of data quality maturity, right? So this question would take a bit more time because we have 6 sub-questions to answer. So we do have some stakeholder involvement, which is great. Not so much on the data contracts and the high test to model ratio, which means you have more data tests than you have data models. Let's see. Might get some more answers coming in. Right. So stakeholder involvement is something that is already developed, which is good, which we're going to dive in. Things like data contracts we're not going to cover today. We're more sort of on the right side, which is data models going into stakeholders' hands. Okay. And just to get some actual qualitative feedback, let's see, what are your challenges in data? So we have historical depth, low priority. Maybe we can get a few more free-form answers here, just to get some ideas of where your challenges lie. Missing use cases. Okay, good. I think that gives us an idea of where you stand. Let's see. Apply proper unit tests. Legacy systems. Debt is also a challenge. Not clearly defined metrics. I would say let's give you 1 or 2 more minutes just to get some feedback or more feedback. Nice. Okay, so I think the audience, I will be able to cover a couple of topics that we addressed here, and I'll jump right into my repository again. So this is the idea of mixing in those interesting business alerts for the stakeholders, getting them involved into a communication channel like Teams, and then mixing the more boring stuff. So we're going to look at 4 data tests that we use at Bergzeit. We're going to jump into live alerts, and then we're going to jump into a mixture of different DBT tests that we write in a tabular format to to teams and then discuss these with our stakeholders. I chose the live alerts first because I think it's a very good mechanism to showcase that as a data team, you're very close to the speed of business. And I'm just going to jump right in what this looks like for us. We have a channel which is called Live Alerts. And it's a very, very simple test. And we're going to look at the implementation in a minute, where we just say we have a defined event threshold of 4 or 4 events in a 2-hour window. And if this is exceeded, we want to start the discussion. And what this looks like here is we have the last 2 hours sort of aggregated by hour. And if this triggers the alert, then as you can see here, it starts a discussion of what's going on, how can we resolve this? Is this something we can redirect, etc. And where does this come from, or how do we represent this in dbt? So we use dbt Cloud because a couple of features I don't want to advertise it too much, but in this case, it's really helpful for us. So this is our exposure that we just looked at, and we have the 4.4 data connected to it. And let's look at the alert here. Let's see. We have the Cloud Function Live Alerts, and it passes in the 404 alert. So let's just see. It's really a very simple lineage. So basically what we do here is we just query the intraday. Let's see, where is it here? The intraday GA4 source. And it basically subselects that set of page views and the page titles to extract those 404 events. And then we basically just run a cloud function with a little bit of a payload. I think it's, let's see, this payload here. So we give in a time frame, we give in a table name, which is basically just a view table of the current 404 alerts with a bit of context, and then we push this into with a cloud function that just takes the numbers, makes the check, and then writes it to the team. So a very, very simple test. But what it helps is it engages stakeholders with a meaningful event into sort of this overall data discussion communication channel, one of them. As you can see, we have quite a few. And just has this general trigger of, okay, if something happens in that area, in that team's area, then I'm going to jump in and look at it. So it's kind of a spicy element of related to the more boring tests. A couple of other tests that we have, for instance, here. Let's see if I can find one here. A very common, in e-commerce, a very common, an annoying thing is our brand name changes, right? So the buying team decides to change the name of a brand. They don't see all the dependencies that are related to SEO, to performance marketing, etc. And for us, we realized, well, we have to let these stakeholders know that there was a brand name change from one day to the next. In this case, you can see emergency food is now called Trek and Eat. Fantastic. But it usually causes a couple of issues in different teams because not everything is dynamic. Sometimes for instance, the redirects are not all automatically propagated, etc. So we have a couple of these. I'll just show you here. Every time where we have sort of the live context of, we want to know that when things happen, that they happen and have instant effect, like for instance, missing transactions, GA4, etc. So we just built up this list of live alerts that get stakeholders engaged. Right. And then I'll jump back into my repository. And now we'll look at the non-live case, which is basically the sum of failed data tests that we route into different channels. So I'm going to just go through the basic steps and then show you step by step how we do it and a couple of learnings along the way. So we use dbt Cloud. In this case, very specifically, we use a macro. Let's look at the macro here, which captures the the responses from the dbt Cloud API, pulls out the relevant attributes and stores them in a table, in this case called test central. Let's see where the table is here. Right. So we have test central and test result history. This just captures, after a dbt test invocation, all the context that we need. And then we can work with this tabular context and send it to teams, right? And then I think this is a very standard route that we can leverage in every cloud. So we have a log sync. In this case, we say, we'll listen on the updates of test response central. We create a pub subtopic around it. And then we send this tabular structure to, or the information that the table was updated to a post dbt test result cloud function. Then we have basically a routing system of saying, based on these individual dbt test jobs, and we'll look at the tags in a minute, we'll send them to different channels, because in those channels we have actually different sets of stakeholders. So our core tests are sort of the more boring tests, and then we have the analytics alerts where the interesting business alerts happen, and channel pilot is our product feed system where we have inventory alerts, right? And this is special for us, but the idea is that you have a set of data tests, and I'll just show this here in an example here, that we can tag. And what's quite nice is that you can either tag the entire model and say all of these tests are related to this, let's say, topic or channel. Or you could even drill down and say you tag an individual test. And then I'll just jump into the job section right here. What is really nice is that, or a side effect basically, is it doesn't matter if you set the tag on the model level or the test level. dbt would just pick up all these and run them. So the connection is here. We have a test that captures all these either models or tests tagged with analytics alerts. Then we pull them through and route them into the cloud function, and then send them using PyMS Teams to a specific team channel, right? And analytics alerts, as I said, has the context of, let's say, not data quality failures, but business alerts that we sort of custom design with the stakeholders. As an example here, I think we had one here. So these are two pricing models where we basically have pricing snapshots per day, we have price competitive benchmarks, and we have marketplace prices. And these are sort of custom made for the stakeholders, usually take a couple of weeks to fine tune what is the scope, what is a sensible threshold. And these are all basically routed then into, or those that are relevant as a business anomaly are routed into the analytics channel. And all the others are then routed into our sort of core channel, right? And this is basically the core idea of building those audiences, right? Building interesting pieces of alerts for the analytics alerts. So saying, Would you like to know if your volume is less than so-and-so? And then at the end of the day, we can mix these more boring date completeness, not null, uniqueness tests, mix them in with the volume changes, the more interesting volume changes, and the live alerts. And we have this sort of interesting mixture of these are very relevant because they have the real-time context. These are relevant because the stakeholders do not have to check all those leading metrics all the time. The data team has you covered, basically. And then, yes, we have all those boring data quality issues like, I don't know, missing prices in Switzerland or not null prices, etc. And this is basically the kind of the idea of mixing in very relevant, medium relevant, or interesting, and then boring stuff together and have that nice cocktail. Yeah, and that's basically what I wanted to share. I just wanted to, because I built this with Dali. I think this is fantastic here. Dali is still not there to understand how technical relationships to different processes and components work. So I just want to share this because I think this is fantastic. You know how Dali works. It doesn't really understand relationships. If you put in some writing, it doesn't understand correct font. So this was just a nice side effect here I wanted to share. Right. I'll just finish off with a couple of best practices that we learned over time. So if an alert is triggered, how does the stakeholder or a person data team debug that and get more context? Now, what we really like is, let's jump into one example here, is understanding here, if we have a model that failed in some way, use the DBT Explorer to jump into, that was, let's just use another one here. Interesting. Sometimes the search, because we're in exposures, sorry. All right, so here, this is a nice side effect of DBT Cloud. We get the test result and the compiled code. And then not just the engineers that built the tests can use this, jump into BigQuery, and then, let's see here, for instance, and debug. So this is a very fast and easy way for people that are closer to the data warehouse to act on those tests and understand what's happening. If you have stakeholders that do not like to write SQL, but they're involved with the data, it's really important to have a very close connection between the alert and some kind of visualization, right? In this case, we work with Looker Studio in many cases for the live data because we work with BigQuery. But that should not be underestimated. And I showed the 404 case here of if the 404 alert pops up, you want to have some rich context as a stakeholder to understand what's happening. You don't always want to write and debug the queries and get the results from the BigQuery UI. So I think that's something to keep in mind to get stakeholders engaged, to have that very close connection of if an alert, an important alert happens, how do I get some visualization? A couple of other things we do is,
just a
I
quick,
think this is quite common to rotate the first response.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So Philip asked a question. So, and I know that you don't have the window open. So no, it's all good. So do you evaluate the quality development over time? Or so what is your process about it? So he asked, is it in the sense of a Kaizen? So I don't know. How do you approach that?
Do you mean like quality, overall quality as a metric? Is that the question?
I guess so. I mean, if not, Philip, you can just edit the context in there. So at least like I understand is like how does your process look like? How do you check, okay, what does our quality work provide? How can we improve it? And so like what's your process about it? Or like how much time does it take? Or like how much resources do you allocate for that?
Okay. So first of all, like looking backwards, we have the test history. So over time, we can see like what was the amount of warnings, the amount of failures or errors we have over time. I would say at this point, it's really just working from day to day, right? So we want to write good and meaningful tests. We also want to provide these business alerts. So we are kind of holding in the sensors and creating our own issues, you could say, right? So we don't have the long-term quality assessment as in now we're at 98%. We used to be at 96% because the window of what we're looking at is constantly changing, right? So we're adding more models. We might get more granular about, let's say, a price history. So to answer it in a very simple way, we're very short-term focused, right? So we look at the issues that come in, we're trying to resolve them. And I would say we're not at a maturity stage where we look at it from a long-term perspective. Maybe that sort of answers the question. Does it answer the question?
Yes, I think it does. Thanks.
Yeah. Right. I just to finish up here with a few more ideas. I think the rotation helps to have other eyeballs look at the documentation, look at the tests and say, I don't know, this looks weird. This looks very hard to understand. What can we do to make the documentation better? To not just root and ownership, yes, model ownership, as I mentioned here, is important, but we shouldn't always just route every alert back to the owner, because I think the ownership also have some kind of incentive to improve the documentation for other people to make it more accessible, right? Yeah, some things we're also experimenting with is like the group allocation. Like if the model owner is on holiday, like what's the higher level fallback in terms of a group? All these little bits and pieces that we can use from DBT to get this practice of interacting with tests, including stakeholders, make it better over time. Yeah. So that would be it. Kind of in time, I would say. I shared the links, right? Let's see. Timo,
No, I shared all the links. All good.
Nice.
Perfect. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Christopher. That was really, really interesting.
Excellent. So have a good conference, everyone. Have a good Wednesday, and all the best.